Okay, board members, we're ready to get back to that sequel of lawn licensing that everybody's been waiting for the whole day. This is the 55-minute version.
This is the heavy lift one.
Thanks, board member. Okay, we do have a quorum, so we're going to go ahead and turn the time over to Chair Hymas. Go ahead.
Thank you. We are going to jump to agenda item 5.2, R277-123, process for members of the public to report violations of statute and board rule. The motion for the board is that the board approve R277-123, process for members of the public to report violations of statute and board rule, draft 4, on second and final reading.
Okay, do we have any comments to this or any suggestions? Oh, Board Member Carey.
Yeah, I just have I do have some motions, but on line 24, and I don't know if Ben or someone could address this, but on draft 4, it says on that first line, insofar as they create. And I just wonder about that language because either they do or they don't, is the way I read it. And so when it says insofar as they create, I'm just wondering, why is that language there? Like,
what line again, Jeff?
line 24 on draft 4.
So this is the oversight category. This rule is kind of unique in that it creates requirements both for internal audit staff and for LEAs. And so we have to make a distinction in that the requirements that are for board staff are exempt generally from the oversight framework, while requirements for LEAs are not. So what we're saying is, to the extent that this rule governs an LEA and creates requirements for LEAs, it's going to be category 2. Which is no staff assigned, but staff will assist with questions where they exist. And then to the extent that this governs USBE staff, the rule is exempt from the framework. And that's what I'm trying to say there.
Vice Chair, may I?
Yeah, go ahead.
The other question I have, is it also in part, Director Rasmussen, because this is a voluntary undertaking for LEAs? And so if they don't opt to create a local hotline, this rule would not apply?
Well, each LEA is required to either have a hotline or to refer people to be able to our USBE hotline. So there's requirements for all LEAs here.
To do one of the two things?
Yes.
So it does create a requirement. So why are we saying insofar as it seems to suggest there's ambiguity in whether or not there's requirements for our LEAs?
What I'm trying to say here is that some of the requirements are for LEAs, some of them are for board staff.
And insofar as some of these apply to staff, they would not apply to the LEA necessarily. That's what
The
we're
oversight
trying.
framework doesn't apply for the staff requirement.
I understand. Thank you very much.
Okay.
And I do have motions, but if there's discussion first, that's fine.
Okay, well, let's just go with motions.
Oh,
Oh, do you have a discussion piece?
Sort of. I don't know if you want me to. If you want,
Yeah.
I've got one thing. Joe's got a number. I don't know
Okay,
if that
well,
matters.
go ahead and then we'll
Okay.
come back here.
I had just wanted to say that I really appreciated staff's willingness to take concerns, both from me, and from a number of other people and attorneys especially who contacted staff, and all of my concerns with draft 4 were alleviated, and not in a perfect world. I wouldn't say we're not there yet, but it satisfies me, which one person. But I did have one last thought, and it's sort of a question, sort of a comment on line 38. If I can, I guess, address it to Ben Rasmussen.
Yes,
is
that would be
okay?
fine. Go ahead.
Everywhere else in the rule, because the statute that directs this rule kind of drives this rule, talks about violations of law or rule. And so it started out with other concerns throughout, and that was gradually eliminated because those were not the requirements of the statute. But it's still in one place on line 38. And I don't know if it was missed or if it was intentionally left there. And I get that there's a little bit of a gray area because those kinds of complaints will come, but I almost thought it might be better to just not acknowledge them because they're not covered by the statute. But I will hear what you have to say in response to that.
Are you thinking of taking this?
I'd like to hear it, in fact.
Okay, so Chief Audit Executive Debbie Davis, and yes, we have gone the rounds with this rule, a little bit like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. It's too hot, too cold, and we're getting close to just right. We were very intentional in draft 4 with the use of alleged violation, which is what is included in Utah code, that the board must provide a way for individuals to submit alleged violations of code and statute. So, and you'll see there is a definition for that. There is a recognition with the hotline that we also receive other concerns, whether we want them or not. We're not soliciting them, but we do receive them. And so kind of the compromise, and again, being very intentional with the use of the language, and you'll see it throughout. Hotline complaint is intended to pick up both alleged violations and other concern. So it does have both of those words, right? Both of those terms. And other concern means not an alleged violation of board or rule, but there are other things that could be a problem that somebody might want to say. So throughout the rule, you'll see we've been very intentional with alleged violation, and especially in, hey, people can submit these, and we're trying to use alleged violation there. But then when we refer out, we're referring hotline complaints, because we might refer out an other concern as well as an alleged violation. So it was intentional that it is on line 38 in the definition of hotline complaint.
And that's the only place it's left.
I believe so.
It is.
Well,
And
yes.
I can live with that, and I've heard that explanation before, and I know it's a balance, and I know you'll get them. I guess my preference, I'm just suggesting my preference would be to say if you get other concerns because they're not what the hotline is intended to remedy, that you would either just let the complainant know that this is not a violation of board rule or law. That would be my preference. But I can probably live with it in this one place, acknowledging that you're going to get them. I just don't believe they have a place to be investigated the same way that the statute designates violations of board rule or law. So that was my only remaining concern. You've got a couple of typos still in there that I'm sure you'll find in draft 4 even.
And maybe I can respond to that too, because I've thought a little bit about this as well. But to say, oh, you have a concern, sorry, it's not we don't know if that's a violation, or that doesn't look like a violation, therefore we're not going to take your call. I just think we take anything from the public, right? And it could even be a compliment, right? It doesn't even have to be a concern. But what I guess my point is that I think articulating what you do if there is a violation, right, needs to be very clear. But to say, oh, but it's limited to violations, or it's limited to this, I don't think we can, well, often I don't think the public can sort out whether it's a violation or just a concern that could be easily, called up and said, your website, we got a concern from a parent. It's not a violation of law, but an articulation would assist with that. It seems like it would be appropriate to leave it here. Anyways, so, okay. Well, I had Board Member Carey. Oh, you want to, okay, Board Member Bogus, did you have something you wanted to?
Yeah, if I could, Vice Chair Earl, through the chair, if I can direct you, CAE Davis, to line 61, I believe. And I don't have an issue with the language itself. I have an issue with, or a question rather, about how this reconciles with 217. In 217, we created some sort of, I don't have the quotable language in front of me, a mechanism that requires our LEAs to report all concerns that they receive to the state board within 30 days. Something to that effect. And I'm wondering where in this rule, or if in this rule, there's a mechanism that includes a way to carbon copy, if you will, the USBE in fulfillment of that requirement to not just increase transparency, but to alleviate the burdens on our LEAs when and if they get a hotline. That's a lot of duplicative endeavor. Did you track with my question? Okay.
I think you'll see in the rule that if they get a hotline, that gets reported to UPAC. That's where that 217 reporting goes, is to UPAC. The 217 reporting requirement is a little bit different in that reporting requirement is specific to violations of the educator standards, but this rule does require that anything that implicates the standards gets reported to UPAC, and that's what the internal audit staff does.
Can I clarify as well? So Director Rasmussen's correct, and it's on about line 157 that says, if we receive a concern that includes something in 217 and educator misconduct, we would refer that to UPAC. We also refer that to the LEA. So we're the ones reporting it to UPAC. So if the LEA thought they needed to report something as well, and I think that's what your question was getting to, the LEA has a reporting requirement to UPAC. So hopefully in kind of triangulating that and saying, hey, everybody that needs to be involved, we want you all to have the same information. And so we're trying to make sure the LEA is aware, UPAC is aware, everyone that needs to be aware is aware. And when we send the referrals out, we make sure the LEA is aware that we also referred this to UPAC. And we tell Ben at UPAC, we say, hey, UPAC, we also referred this to the LEA. So we're trying to connect all the dots for everyone. I don't know if that quite got to the answer of your question.
Yes. Good. So my first follow-up is, what was your line number? Because I thought I caught it and I didn't.
157 to 161.
7 and 8. Okay. And then my last question is there a mechanism? Not like I think you're understanding, maybe conflating process and mechanism. Do we have a mechanism, not just a, hey, we're going to do this, this is the process, but do we have a mechanism to complete that? Or does it have to be done by hand by humans?
Right now, it's done by hand by humans. I think we are maybe quickly approaching the point where we might want to consider a system that would take in hotlines and we could designate access, but currently it is a pretty manual process.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Carey.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion, and I apologize. I started doing this with Ben earlier. The draft 4 was added late. I didn't have access to it, so I was working off draft 3, and so now I'm just going to make these verbally. But if
These are amendments, though, they're not motions. I mean, not.
it's
yeah.
a motion to amend.
Yeah.
Yep. And so if we could go to line 39. And sometimes we break down specifically the individuals that can file these complaints, and other times we just use the word individual. So my motion, just to make this consistent, would be on line 38, it says submitted to the board's public education hotline directly or forwarded to the IAD by an individual. And then strike board member, board staff, or other individual entity or agency, and have it resume at or submitted to a local education hotline.
I could ask if there's any opposition. I'll read it out, and if there's not any opposition. Yep, let me read it out. So you would be on line 39. It would be to strike, it would be to insert individual, and it would be to strike board member, board staff, or another individual entity or agency, right?
Yes.
So it'd be to strike that and just put individual, so it's not, yeah, we already explained it, but. Is there anyone who? Okay, it's seconded. Anybody that is in opposition to that or would like to vote on that separate? If not? Sure, yep.
And if I could just speak to the motion, I would just refer to line 62, where again, we use the word individual rather than breaking everyone out separately. But then again, when we go to line 76 and 77, we list everyone out by title. And I don't think, I think we're saying the same thing in all three of those areas, so I think let's just use the word individual. And if I'm wrong, Director Rasmussen,
I don't think we see any issue there.
Okay, does this body have any issues if we made those two changes to individual and struck the wordiness of trying to list out?
I just
Oh, go ahead.
question. I don't think this is a opposition. On some of these, there's been a question whether certain individuals could bring a complaint. I know this came up in sensitive materials. Was there some compelling reason that we wanted these people listed? Because otherwise, I would agree with Member Carey. Is there some need for that otherwise creates ambiguity or dispute?
No, I think it's just
Okay.
illustrative of who has submitted these in the past.
Gotcha.
Okay, if there's no opposition, I will oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
This really is more just a clerical change, but would like to throw it out there.
Okay.
On line 41, IAD means the board's internal audit department. I think that probably ought to be moved up, maybe after line 35, because on line 39, we use IAD, and then we define it afterwards.
That's the alphabetical. That's the definition section.
Yeah, I think it's in order by definition, but I think but maybe instead of doing that, when you have IAD, you could just spell it out. Does that make sense? The board's internal.
I don't know the
Yeah.
parts, but
Okay.
usually when I read those.
Okay, I just want to make clear, was there any opposition to the individual on either one of those? Okay, so that moves forward. Go ahead.
and then on line 66, it says resolved means that an investigation has been completed. And I would just like to add, and the findings reported to a complainant.
Okay, is there a second? Yes. Okay, there's a second to that. Board Member Lair?
Complementary change would be right below that where require that the results, maybe that should be also changed to findings.
So it's okay.
Consistent.
Okay. Go ahead, Member Bogus.
I don't know what draft you're looking at, Member Carey, but if I heard your line numbers correctly, 68 and 69, or 66 and 67 rather, it does involve that language. It does not appear to me that it says and findings, but some of that language is already in there in draft 4. Are we looking at the same line, or is that a different line that I'm not familiar with?
Or it might have been removed. Because I have it stricken in mine. The one I'm stricken and the one I'm looking at.
While they're deciding that, can I ask a
Yes. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wondered, and if I could direct it to staff, because I see what Joe is saying, I agree with him completely. This is just for me, is there a difference between a finding and a report? Is it the same thing? Happy to, Okay. And I don't want to wordsmith, I'm just wondering if what Vice Chair Carey is asking is already in there, or is finding, and maybe you see it differently as well, Joe, I don't know. To me, it's not a big deal, wondering why it would be brought up.
If I may
Yes, go
address
ahead.
that.
Yep.
My only concern was that the investigation's completed and maybe the LEA just says the investigation's completed. And so I would like the findings, like what happened. That's what I'm looking for. And the LEA can determine how they define that, but rather than just a simple, this matter's closed, it's been resolved.
Just quickly, I appreciate that. That's much better than just saying, yeah, I told them we're good. That's a report, right? A finding actually gives some feedback, so thank you.
I have a comment.
Just one moment. We'll have you on the list. I have Board Member Davis, and then you're next, okay? Go ahead, Board Member Davis.
In this context, do findings mean what they mean in an audit? For example, when we are audited and all is well, we say there were no findings. So is there anything about adding the language of findings here that would mean that some findings have to be reported? What if there are no findings, or is that just, I don't know. Does that language imply that there will always be a finding? I don't know. Or is it just defined as results in this?
I think that the next line kind of speaks to that 68 where it says that resolved does not mean or require that the results or the findings, if that's how the motion is adopted, are satisfactory to the complainant. I think it's inherent in that. I think that it kind of speaks to the fact that there doesn't have to be findings that the complainant likes.
Get a quick follow.
Yes, go ahead.
I mean, would it be proper to add something or the lack thereof, report the findings or the lack thereof to the complainant, and then in 68 just leave it? That doesn't mean they agree with the findings.
I don't think it's necessary, but if you think that would
If
help.
nobody thinks it's necessary, that's fine. I just, whenever we say findings, it's always a negative context, and in this, it seems like it's a neutral context. It might be not good, and it might be great, depending on whomever's reading it.
Yeah, go ahead, Debbie.
Okay, just a little bit of extra context with the definition of resolved. This was actually added to this rule when 123-6 about the sensitive materials was added. So it was specifically added for that context. Now, specific to hotlines, there are provisions in the rule where internal audit could do a preliminary investigation or an investigation or recommend an audit. So it's possible that resolved could apply to an investigation of a hotline. I will just tell you that is extremely rare. So from a hotline perspective, it would be rare that you'd even get to the point of reporting out a finding from an investigation. Also, specific to an LEA, if we refer to an LEA, they would follow their process, whatever that looks like. We don't dictate anywhere in the rule what their report looks like, what their findings are, how they would talk to the complainant that submitted something. It's on line 304 through 306. We do request that if we refer, that within 45 days, they would provide us with an update or a summary of what's going on, just to say, hey, is this moving along? But just kind of recognize the limited context of resolved, that it was specifically applicable to the sensitive materials section, although it could be used for hotlines should we investigate, which again would be a rare circumstance. Findings does mean that you found something, right? And generally it would be there's a criteria and you found something that's different than what it should be, and so a corrective action is necessary. So if you wanted to add, as mentioned, the findings or lack thereof, that I don't know that.
Yes, and then Chair
Yeah.
Moss is after that, and I think we have Board Member Klein too, but go
Yeah,
ahead.
and I understand what Board Member Davis is saying. It's always been my understanding that a finding can be there was nothing amiss, there was nothing awry. What I'm hearing from, I don't like calling you Debbie, but the director of, audit, again, and that's why I put it there. I am not opposed to the language, but it was always my understanding a finding could also mean we looked and there was nothing there.
Okay. Do you want to?
It could be either of those circumstances, depending on how you want to define the term. Generally, in our reports, a finding would connote we found a discrepancy. There's a criteria that we didn't quite meet. If you're going to say we didn't find anything, usually that's just in a letter. It wouldn't be in the finding section of a report.
Okay, Chair Moss?
Thanks. I was checking with AAG abuse because I just wanted to double check that we don't cross any lines on privacy. Sometimes findings include elements that are otherwise protected by law, and I assume we would not be intending to require them to disclose, but I wanted to see if you'd weigh in on what that line might be and whether we need any
So
limiting language or clarifying language, either you or Michelle. I'm getting the legal auditing, whatever.
I apologize. I jumped right over the top of you. On lines 307 and 308, it does say nothing in this rule shall require the disclosure of information that is considered protected or private under federal or state law. So that's the provision that's intended to hopefully ensure that nothing's getting out that should not.
Got it. Cool. So nobody would say, I got to do the findings and then disclose something they should not have. They'll follow that caveat. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Where are we at? Okay, Board Member Klein.
Okay.
Is this,
So
just one quick second, is this related to the findings piece, or is this a new question?
it's a new question.
Okay, so hold on just a minute. Let's finish out the discussion and whether we're going to move forward on the language with findings, and then you're first after that, okay? If I'm understanding, help me.
Well, I guess, it might.
Oh, okay. Go ahead then.
I'm trying to understand what the process is if a report is made to a district and to the USBE hotline. Who is responsible for returning the call or relaying the findings of that investigation of a possible violation? Is it the district, or is it UPAC, or is it the audit hotline?
Okay, does someone want to weigh in on that?
I'll weigh in, and then if Ben wants to weigh in on UPAC, he can. So generally the process is we receive a concern on the hotline. When we receive a concern, we'll do a quick little kind of a screen and say who has jurisdiction or authority to investigate or review or resolve this concern, and the majority of those are LEAs. So we would then refer to the LEA, and at that point, we would consider it closed on our end. We do notify the complainant that we have made the referral, and if they come back and say, hey, what happened with this, we would say, remember, we referred this to the LEA, this is who we referred it to, and you should follow up with them to see if any action was taken. So currently, there's not resources, it's not part of the policy, that there's that follow-up that's happening with USBE. So it should be the LEA or whomever receives the referral that would follow up with the individual. Now, of course, some concerns, there's referrals to multiple individuals, and in that case, it does get a little bit tricky about, well, who's following up with the individual that made the complaint? Is it UPAC? Is it the LEA? All I can say is it's generally not internal audit.
Okay, so if it was a complaint about a possible violation of R277, 217, the educator standards, and it was referred to UPAC, would UPAC have the responsibility of getting back to the individual who filed the complaint of an alleged violation?
So if it's a UPAC complaint or a complaint about the violation of the educator standards, the complainant would either receive a letter that said UPAC has reviewed the situation and declined to open a case, or if we open a case, the attorney that investigates the case would brief them along the way, be in touch with them during the investigation, and would let them know of the ultimate outcome.
Okay, I'm asking because I have a specific scenario that didn't follow that. It was reported as a possible violation of 217. It was referred to UPAC. UPAC did not respond. The school did not respond. The teacher had, or the parent had to follow up with the school to find out. The teacher, I think a board member had to ask the administration if they had heard. And so she then relayed what the administration told her to the parent, which was that, they felt like the Safe Space Rainbow poster was that they actually said that we have worked with Ben Rasmussen at UPAC on this matter. Ben instructs us that the display is allowed as long as there is no malicious intent on behalf of the teacher. Our investigation finds no malicious intent, and the teacher may keep the sign. So I'm trying to reconcile, I mean, just the process for not having heard back from UPAC, but also the who gets to interpret the law and decide intent, and is that part of our educator standards, intent, and malicious intent specifically, or does it violate the rule regardless of intent? I have a lot of questions, so I don't know if you want to address any of that.
Director Rasmussen?
Excuse me. So in the case that the board member is talking about, the LEA referred the case to us, and so that would be our complainant. We would have notified the LEA that we didn't open that case. That was something that UPAC reviewed and declined to open, but we would notify the LEA if they were the one that referred the case to us.
Okay. Board Member
The
Green?
parent also submitted it to the USBE hotline as well. So would that not get a response from UPAC?
I'd have to look at the complaints to see the specific details. That was a recent case, and we may be a little bit behind in sending out notifications, but I'd have to look at the facts.
Okay. Board Member Green?
Well, I'm trying to figure out, could we look at line 195? And I was
So would
seeing
we,
if-
oh, can we, will you hold for just a minute? Let us just finish is this with
Oh.
now I can't remember the language. With the findings? Is it a different?
No, it is this.
Oh, okay. Go
Yeah,
ahead then.
and I think it's just trying to clarify what is being asked and
Okay.
how the findings are reported to a complainant.
Perfect.
Line 195 says that if a response is requested by a complainant, the IAD shall respond to the complainant within 3 business days or as soon as possible. Does that apply to this and to her? Sorry, to Member Klein. I'm off in left field. I'm just scanning everything to see if there is something that was built in.
No, I appreciate the clarification. So in this case where we use the term response and wanting to make sure once we receive a concern on the public education hotline, we want to respond, if requested, within 3 days so that an individual knows we have received the concern. Generally, we're able to respond and say, this is who we've referred it to, here's some additional information. We can usually do that within 3 days. Every once in a while, we have to say, we've got it, this is the hotline number, we're doing some research and we'll get back to you. But the intent of 195 is that initial response after we've received the concern so that they know we've got it, we're working on it, you have a number to refer back to us. So that's the intent of the response, where on the lines 65, with resolved, that would be if an investigation has been taken place and there would be some official result that came of that. So a response and then resolved in response to an investigation are a little bit different.
Okay. We good there? Okay, so can
Can I follow up?
yes.
I'm just trying to follow up on the one part where does the rule say anything about intent? And if it's not malicious intent, then it's allowed?
Would that be under a different rule, or does that need to be under this rule?
R277217 does that allow for intent, and does it say anything about does it have to be malicious intent for it to be a problem?
And I guess my question is it on this rule we're doing right now, or are you referring to R277?
Well, I would like an answer to that question one way or the other, because I need to respond to this parent, and I would like to know for the public record and the rest of the public, does a violation of the educator's standards require malicious intent in order for it to be a violation?
Can I just update something? So I should correct something. So I pulled up my list to see if I could refresh my recollection on the details of the case that Board Member Klein is asking about. That was only referred to us a couple weeks ago, so that'll actually go to UPAC next week. And the process would be to advise the complainant after UPAC discusses whether or not to open a case.
So it's still in the process?
Yes.
Okay.
Apologize for
Well,
that.
the district told the parent that the sign is allowed because it was not malicious intent. It's allowed, and that was the information they received from UPAC, from Ben Rasmussen himself.
Okay.
So
Okay.
It sounds, the parent thinks it's resolved and done with, and yet so obviously there's some process issues here that need to be addressed.
Okay. It looks like we have, help me where we're at. We've got findings we're adding in 2 places or just one? Okay, so on A and B, we're looking at, instead of results, we'd be putting findings. Okay, so the amendment then would be to, on lines 66 and 67, add, and the findings reported to a complainant, and then also change results to findings on line 68. Okay, go ahead and vote on that amendment. Board Member Klein?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. Board Member Rill, is she there? Oh, I just can't see. Okay. I can't see you behind Leanne. No, it's okay. You can leap forward. I just couldn't see Sarah. Okay, I think that's it. Did we have some no's? We did. Who are our no's? Board Member Wood, Rill, and Davis were no's on that one, and that one passed. Okay. Go ahead, Board Member Carey. Mike.
The next one would be, and again, this may be technical, but line 75 through 78, I would recommend that the language just be an individual.
I think we did address that earlier. Did we address both, or would you like, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I
sorry.
don't think we.
I thought we did.
It would be an individual, and then we would strike all the language up until may report an alleged violation.
Okay, is there anyone that's opposed to that? What is the line number? 75. So it's just clarifying more than anything, just saying it could be any individual, not just, and then listing off. Okay, I'm not seeing anyone in opposition,
I
or,
don't see anyone typing.
yep, I will. Sure. It says anyone, and then it lists off a whole bunch of. 75.
Oh, yeah, and so again, the language would be,
Okay. Okay. So individual there, and I
Yeah.
don't see any opposition, so we're going to consider that.
it would read an individual. I will take that.
Okay, an individual may, is that what we're looking? Anyone may report, okay? Either way, that simplifies it. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody in opposition to that. Go ahead with the next recommendation.
Well, I have a question on that.
Yes, go ahead.
Does that include anyone can report on sensitive material?
Yes, anyone can, this is our hotline, and I guess the district's hotline. Anyone can report, right? I don't know if you can answer that.
Even though in the sensitive materials legislation, it requires someone to have standing in order to report?
Well, I think anyone could report, but that doesn't mean they, right? You have to have standing for it to be relevant, though. Right, and in local, right? So,
Sensitive materials reporting
So
process would be different than this. This is the USB
yeah, this is,
hotline.
right, that is.
So should it clarify? Otherwise, it leads people to believe they can when they can't, or even if they report it, it won't be looked at
Well,
if they
if-
don't have standing.
correct me if I'm wrong, if they report something and they don't have standing, then the response back to them is, you need to have standing, or whatever that is. Would that be accurate? That audit would actually notify them of what the.
Yes, we
that?
could notify that. So on line 363, 364, that's specific to sensitive materials, and it does say an individual with standing may request, and it goes from there. So if we received something in general, we would process it in our normal way. We would point out they have to have standing and then refer it. And then, as mentioned, if it would be pursued or not would be dependent on their standing.
But it's not dependent on reporting, like anyone could report.
Anyone
but
could report.
The outcome would be.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Board Member Carey? Is that it?
Did we vote on that already?
Well, we said, is there any opposition? So go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry. And then next would be lines 118 through 123. And then it's just my understanding that this deals with someone files a complaint and all of a sudden they go dark, you can't get a hold of them. We struck that language. My question is, was what in lines 118 through 123 addressed in line 352? And if not, what happens to that individual who files a complaint and then is non-responsive?
Okay, so 352 is specific to a resubmission. Right, so it's a little bit of a different circumstance. So if an individual resubmitted, we would of course be having some back and forth with them. So that's a little bit of a different circumstance. I think 118 through 123, that was just in draft 4. The idea was let's simplify as much as possible. And so it was deemed like, hey, you don't need to put that in there. Of course, you're going to close it if someone's non-responsive. So the question is, do we want it in there so people know up front, or just leave it struck and it's like, I mean, we'll try, but we'll eventually close it. We're not going to leave it open.
Okay. Do you have a, yeah, go ahead. You got a recommend, we need to turn it on.
So if I may just ask a question then?
Yes, go ahead.
So if the complainant goes dark and doesn't respond, is that matter marked as resolved or closed? Is there a different designation because it may not be resolved, but it's obviously ripe to be closed?
That's a great question. So we do, depending on how much information is submitted with the initial concern, we may be able to make a referral based on that. So that's kind of the process we look at, is how much was submitted, and if we can make a referral, we will. And so then the status would be marked referred. If there's not enough data that we can even make a referral, we will close it as insufficient data, because it can't move forward. So in that regard, we would not mark it resolved.
May I just follow?
Yes, go ahead.
So what percentage, just, and I understand I'm not looking for an exact number, but what percentage does that happen where they're just not getting back to us, we don't have enough data to contact them? Is that 1% of the cases, 5%?
Okay, I'm testing my memory, but I think it's about 8%. So this is just specific to state fiscal year 2025 and concerns that are specific to LEAs. And I think it's about 8% that have insufficient data that we haven't been able to refer. So a lower percentage, I will say, 2025 has had a higher amount of insufficient data than prior years.
Okay, and I don't have any motion for that then based on those
Okay.
answers. But if we could go to line 1.
Oh, yes, go
sorry.
ahead.
Specifically?
Yes.
So CA Davis, with regard to line 118 through 123, my question would be, are there any parameters in this rule, because I don't see or recall any, that say what are the parameters or the stipulations that would close a complaint? It says 2 attempts within a week, 2 attempts within a month. What are the confines of saying we've done our due diligence? We've called and emailed in one day, no response, it's over. I'm just wondering how you define the outreach. Thank you.
Absolutely. So that because it's not in the rule, it has been left up to our discretion. I would say generally over a 2 or 3 week period is when we're looking at that. I definitely, because hotline information is reported to the audit committee on a monthly basis, it definitely wouldn't be longer than a month, because we're constantly looking at that and trying to follow up. But probably within a 2 or 3 week period is practice, because there is not current policy or parameters that are established in rule.
Should we create parameters? It seems prudent that maybe we should amend this with parameters, and if so, Ben, where would I put them? Maybe.
could reinstate lines 118 through 120 and just put a time frame after, if the complainant does not respond to IAD after 2 days, 5 days, whatever you want to put, the IAD shall close the hotline complaint.
Can I ask a question? Are we setting too much of a parameter by doing that? Do you know what I mean? Are we creating, meaning someone might just not respond for a couple of weeks out, and I guess you could reopen it, so maybe that's not relevant. I'm just making sure we're also not pushing back in a way that we may be creating problems. And maybe not. That's, yeah.
No, these are excellent questions. Every hotline is a little bit different. So maybe one of the questions is there a parameter on someone has to respond to internal audit if we're asking for additional information, which that would be very hard to designate, like, hey, you have to get back to us within 5 days, or is it just internal audit is going to try 2 more times within a month, or, you know, whatever the languages that Member Bogus is going to come up with. I think that's very relevant to consider, like, which of those are we talking about? You're right. Usually when people are contacting the hotline, it's an emotional event, and so it can take an amount of time. Generally, if we don't hear from them in our initial response or as we're trying to reach out to them, we do let them know we're going to close this, but if you reach back out, this is the number and we will reopen it. So we are trying to make sure that that's clear.
Okay, thank you. We'll come back then, Board Member Bogus, if that's okay. Okay, Board Member Carey?
This is, would be a new line between 149 and 150. This deals with the reporting out. And the IAD shall make 1 or more referrals to the complainant, board leadership, and then it lists a whole bunch. I would like to make a motion to add a new line 150 and as provision C, and that language would read, the board member representing the district.
Okay.
And if there's any questions, I'm happy to speak to it, but if not,
Is there, any opposition to that? Anybody would like to vote on that, or you comfortable with that? Okay. Okay, let's vote on that then. So, okay, go ahead and, do you want to speak to that? It's been seconded. I think you kind of did, but. Well, I was actually talking to Board Member Carey.
yeah. Again, I just think it's important, and we talked about, how each of us is empowered equally on the board. This is an incident or alleged incident that occurred in our district, and I think it's important for the board member representing that district to be notified and advised of it. And the same restrictions that are on the complainant, board leadership, and others obviously would apply to the individual board member. But again, I think to carry out our duties, it's imperative that we're made aware of that.
Yes.
Just to clarify, so I understand, depending on how this moves forward. So our understanding of what this would do is that internal audit could make multiple referrals, and it would be dependent on the concern that comes in. So we're not saying we will notify everybody that's listed here, just we will notify as needed for that hotline is who we would notify. So is that the right understanding? Did I understand that right?
Okay.
That would be my understanding. So if there was an incident in one of the Weber or Ogden schools in my district, then I would be notified of that. But if it's something that took place in Salt Lake or, well, nothing ever happens in Cedar City, but if it happened in Cedar City, I would be, that not my area, you would notify the board member representing that area.
Okay, do you have a?
So one more follow-up, just to make sure I understand. So for example, where we have board leadership listed here, that we might send something to board leadership, usually that would be if it's a very egregious circumstance or we have quite a number of concerns that have come in. We don't always, actually it's probably pretty rare that we would send a hotline concern to board leadership. So again, it would be, not everybody on this list would get every hotline, and as you said, even if it's for Davis and it's going to Member Wood, or I wasn't reading it that way, that, hey, if it was Weber, it's going to Member Carey every time. So if it's every time it's Weber, I'm sending it to Member Carey, that's just an understanding I need to have to make sure that we employ our duty accurately.
Okay, do you want to clarify?
No, and I agree. You still exercise your discretion that way, just as you exercise your discretion as when to advise board leadership. You would exercise that same discretion when this has reached the level where that local board member representing that area needs to know.
Okay, Board Member Davis. And then Board Member,
Oh, that might answer my question, I guess. Like, for example, if there's a issue with a coach, I mean, we have zero authority for personnel issues. So I'm assuming in those cases, you're not going to send those to us. It's like if there's something where it's going to be a licensing issue or something that we have jurisdiction over, or it's gone to that egregious level, then if it's to the level you're going to send board leadership, you should I think a board member should be copied. I don't think we should be sent every single thing. You know, there's hundreds of things, but sometimes people write about because they just need to be directed to the right person or what have you. But that's kind of what I'm hearing, if I'm understanding that right.
okay, Board Member Wood. We can
And
circle
I
back.
think that's just clarifying what I was feeling like. If this was a licensing issue, it could come to UPAC. And for me, I've kind of stayed away from those things. When parents have come to me, I've referred them to the hotline or to the district, so that knowing that if it circled back to me, I didn't have half a story, I had the full story. So I want to make sure that that's kind of the proper route to go.
Okay, Chair Hymas.
Thank you. I'm wondering if then, instead of having a C with the board member that represents that district, if what we're getting at, and I'm asking the maker of this motion, what we're getting at is B would read more along the lines of board leadership plus the board member representing the district.
Board Member Carey? Does that?
Yeah, and I agree with Board Member Hymas that I think, in light of what Board Member Davis said, I was thinking along the same lines, that, and maybe the motion be amended to read board membership and the board member representing the district. And I think that clears up the ambiguity that if it reaches that level, it's not only board leadership who would be notified, but the board member as well.
Okay.
Thank you, Director Davis. Thank you for that feedback.
Okay, Board Member Bacchus, did you have a question on this? No. Oh, your light's on, so. Okay, is it related to this? Okay, so we'll have you go next. So the amendment before the board is that we insert, we're not inserting line after 149, right? We're including it on 149, right? So that it, amend line 49 to read board leadership and the board member representing the district. Okay, so that is the motion before the board. And as soon as it pulls up, we will vote, so. Just a second here. Okay, go ahead and vote. Is that right?
So Kelsey, the language over here is not right. Is that okay?
The language on the left correct?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, it got cut off, so I'll add it after the fact.
Okay, because line 150 is no longer being affected.
Yeah, that,
Do you want to go back and clean that up? Oh, okay. One more second here. Yes, as soon as we have it back up. Okay, go ahead and vote. Board Member Klein, and I can read it again if you're not sure what that is. We're adding amend it to say board leadership and the board member representing that district.
Yes.
Go ahead and vote. Leanne, would you mind getting, as she's voted yes on this? Yeah, thank you. Okay, Board Member Bott, do you have a couple more? Why don't we finish yours and then we'll head to board, is that okay? Board Member Vargas, go ahead, Board Member Carey. Oh, let me read that out, I apologize. So that was 12 to 2, it passed, and the 2 no votes were, someone read that for me from this? Board Member Rill and Board Member Lear.
So, lines 202 to 204. And this is more of a question, and I apologize, but it says that the IAD shall provide training and informational materials for use by an LEA governing board.
So, I'm sorry, Joe, I keep missing the line numbers.
Oh, 202 to 204.
Okay.
Could you just give us help us understand the vision of that? Is that you and your staff going out doing this training? Is that videotape training? And is there a projected cost associated with the training that is being proposed in lines 202 to 204?
Absolutely, happy to answer that. So that language there, and then also in lines 281 through 288, they kind of go hand in hand, and it's very similar to what's in R277113 about training on audit committees. And so the provision that you're referring to in 202 is, hey, internal audit's going to prepare this training, and then 281 talks about, well then, and how does it happen? And that language again is taken pretty much, I think, directly out of Rule 113, where it says, hey, the presiding officer is just going to make sure that training happens in accordance with what's required in code, and then they're going to use the training that internal audit puts together. So it is intended to be online, based on kind of how you look at it. It would be an online training. Of course, we can do in-person technical assistance if someone reaches out, but it is intended to be just like that audit training from 113 that would be online, and so anybody could go access it at any point in time.
Okay,
A quick
question?
follow-up.
Yes.
Is there any cost projection associated with that?
The cost would be me and my staff's time to put that together. So we are thinking of a shorter training, but the thought was, because we tried to simplify this rule a lot, but it can be misunderstood, it might be good to just put together, I don't know, a 10-minute training or something. Just, hey, just here's a couple things to be aware of with the rule, just so everybody's on the same page, that there's clarity there. So it would be whatever the cost is for my staff to put together about a 10-minute training on the rule.
And when you say 10-minute training, that might be a video that people could go watch, that kind of a
Yes.
training?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Kind of information.
Vice Chair, just one
Yep.
last motion.
Yes, go ahead.
And that would be on line 293.
Okay. 293.
And I would just like it to mirror the language of 292, in that it would read readily accessible access to the state public education hotline. Ben, you winced a little bit. Is that not appropriate there? Okay.
So maybe take readily out on the word one above and just put accessible?
Because readily can be subjective. Are you asking for on-demand kind of thing?
No, I just want to make sure that if they go there, they see the option to contact the state as well. But I'm fine with either one.
They should just be parallel, which is what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
So what would you like?
Let's just leave it like that unless there's,
Put readily in?
yeah.
Okay. Okay, so was there a second? Yeah. There was a second? Okay. Unless there's any objection, it would be adding readily accessible access to the public education hotline. Is there anybody that? Yeah. So it's, an LEA governing board shall allow individuals to report alleged violations consistent with subsection da-da-da-da-da by providing on its LEA website and each school's website, and then it would say readily accessible access to the state hotline.
Did you get the I before that?
Yeah, but I was just reading the one that we were changing, so, but I could read both if necessary. Board Member Carey?
And again, the purpose is uniformity, so that's the driver
It
behind
just
this.
readily accessible, right?
The second
Readily
access needs to
accessible.
be.
Yeah.
Whoever's driving it.
Readily accessible. It's not enough? Okay, readily accessible access. This one up here?
So it would read, an LEA governing board shall allow individuals to report alleged violations consistent with the rule by providing on its LEA website and each school's website readily accessible access to the state public education hotline. You have to have a noun there, so you can't just strike access. I mean, it might be more appropriate, as Board Member Davis is saying, to change that to, instead of readily accessible access to, a link to the state public education hotline.
Board Member
'Cause
Carey?
it's not really the LEA that is providing the access to the state hotline.
Yeah, and I would be fine with the link, and I would suggest we probably use the one which is referenced in line 78.
What do you mean the one listed? I don't, oh, okay, I see what you're saying. So you want us to spell out the whole internet link there?
Well, I'm just saying, we did it in line 78.
Okay.
Again, I will defer to you, Ben. If there's a better way to do it, it doesn't have to be that way. I just want them to know that they can contact USBE as well. I think they'll have to write that on the website.
But it is an or, but it's one or the other. They need to provide one or the other. Just to be clear on that, it's not. Yeah, well, they either have to have an education, local education hotline, or they have to have access to our hotline. It's an or, one or the other. We're asking them to have, in place of requiring a hotline, we're asking them, well, it could be that. They would have to, I guess, that would be their,
I would think it should be both.
Board Member, yeah, Board Member Rill, you had a comment?
Thank you, Vice Chair Earl. I don't think it's good practice to put a URL in a rule whatsoever. URLs change. It hyperlinks to code work because you can update the link to the code if you need, but putting a URL in rule does not seem like a good idea because URLs change frequently, and it's just not great practice from a web perspective.
Okay. Board Member Bogus, is that for your motion, or is this something? Okay. Board Member Carey?
Then if it's a technical change, I would just, in light of the feedback from Board Member Reel, I think that in line 78, there is a spelled out website. And so maybe that, again, should be modified.
Do we want to ask staff to just make a technical change that works?
Yeah.
There are times when you're This is a pretty static URL. I get the point, but this is,
Okay.
In light of what Board Member Reel said, I think if I could amend the motion. I know it was seconded, but if without objection, I think we just strike the link itself and just leave it where you ended it, Director Rasmussen? Yes. And I would make that same recommendation for line 78 unless it's required to be there.
Okay, so I'm trying to figure out where we're at. Are we ready to, we're going to vote on this? Or is this just a technical change?
I have a comment.
Okay, thanks, Board Member Klein. Just one second, let me find where we're at here. So are we looking at this as a technical change, or would we like to vote on it?
The motion itself has to be voted.
Okay, let's vote then.
Can I?
Okay, and Board Member Klein, you have a question related to this?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
So does it list both the local public or the local district hotline and the USBE hotline? Or is it one or the other? Or I can't see except for what
It's separated by an or. They need to have one or the other.
So I would amend it to be and, so that you don't end up having a kind of a fox guarding the henhouse scenario, where if it's reported to the very people that are the ones violating it and they sweep it under the rug or don't address it like they should, then they have another avenue with which to report it. At least that they both be listed, if not reported to.
Okay, is there a second for the and? Okay, I don't hear a second on that. We're back to the original motion, which is, someone highlight it for me. Okay, so that the board amend draft 4 in lines 293 to read a link to the state public education hotline, strike the URL on line 78, and it seemed like there was, okay. That's the motion before the board. Board Member Davis? One more?
Sorry, I only have draft 3 in my backups, unless I missed it.
You
draft
should
4
have draft
going
4 somewhere, because
in somewhere. I was working off it, I thought, but now I'm in a
look at,
now I
make
went
sure
back
you're
to
not
it.
in the top section that you're in, right? Because this was in a
probably
special
am.
meeting.
So you've got it. It was in 2 different places.
So it should be 5.2 that you're at, not in the 4.
5.5. 5.2.
Are you,
Okay.
Okay, you good?
Yeah, that's helpful, but I just want to clarify.
Yes.
So we're asking them to either put either a hotline, like an actual hotline, but is the way it's defined also, they can put either that or their process for their complaint in their LEA, or a link to our hotline. Is
Yes.
those are their choices. And it doesn't have to be a technical hotline. It can be a process of, you can call this person and here's the phone number and email for this problems, and this person for elementary and this person for secondary, or that's
someone,
right.
Can
That's
someone confirm
doable?
that? I don't know that I could speak to that. Yes,
Yes,
Director
so
Davis.
both local education hotline and public education hotline, meaning the state, are defined terms, and it does say process, so you could just list that out.
So it doesn't have to be something they can call or email or whatever. Okay.
Okay. Okay, let's go ahead and vote. And I can read it again if anybody needs me to. Would you like one more read? Okay, thank you. Go ahead and vote. This is on striking the URL. Board Member Klein?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, I'm missing 2 votes. Okay, that's unanimous. And is that all you have, Board Member Carey? Okay, Board Member Bogus, you have a motion?
Yes, ma'am, I would like to move that we reinstate lines number 118 through 120.
Oh, yeah.
And following the comma in IAD, we add the language within 14 calendar days.
What line was that again? Would you mind?
118.
Oh, 118. Okay, I
Through
looked at 18.
120. And then following the word complaint and prior to the period, add the language and notify the complainant of closure.
And notify the complainant.
Of closure.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, there's a second by Board Member Green. Do you want to speak to that motion?
Yeah, so I think as we've entertained the conversation and reviewed, law and licensing, I think that if we're going to close something, we need to have parameters around closure so that we understand that. We communicate that to people. And then if we're closing it, we tell them that it's closed so that they have to, the burden is back on them to re-engage should they choose to. And I think it's just good to have things be time-bound and clear. So, thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Anybody else want to speak to that?
Oh, I have one more comment.
Okay.
And I think 14 days in calendar days is good. That's 2 weeks. And if you're passionate about a complaint, 14 days is enough for people to check their spam folder. It's enough for them to miss a voicemail. It's enough time. 14 days is adequate time to respond back to our internal audit department.
Okay, Board Member Straight.
I'd like to make an amendment.
Okay.
I move 14 calendar days to 10 working days.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes. Wait. It needs to be seconded. Okay. There's a second on there. So go ahead. What's your question?
Is this after it would go to the LEA? If you can't get a hold of anyone. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So the amendment, we're amending the amendment, and it would change from 14 calendar days to 10 working days. I don't see any. Do you have a comment on that, Board Member Vargas? Okay.
So I actually entertained the idea of working days, but I think the question becomes whose working days and what do we do at the end of May when school ends in 2 days? Are we not going to notify them until whenever? I think 14 calendar days is simple, it's easy, and we don't have to engage in all of the permutations and scenarios of what that entails.
I just want clarification. This is our internal audit would be bound by the 14 days, right? Do you guys take summers off?
I might start taking.
Am I right? I'm just making sure that's the right people, right?
So this is internal audit striving to obtain information from a complainant.
Okay.
So
Does that
that's-
make sense, Board Member Vargas? Just the clarification?
So it does, but it begs the question, whose working days? Like calendar days applies to all people. And let's say it's over the 4th of July. So if it's just 14 calendar days, then it doesn't matter. I mean, we don't want this to spread over 3 weeks, or let's say it's, I'm trying to think, Thanksgiving. So then if the day after Thanksgiving, so then we're going to add another 3 days on the end of it. It just seems 14 calendar days is clear. It's not subjective. We don't have to worry about holidays and the chaos that comes with, is it a legal holiday? Is it not a legal holiday? Is it a Utah holiday? Is it not? Like, it just avoids all the crazy questions that come with that. And 14 days is just so much clearer.
Okay. Board Member Straight, did you want to respond?
Just, let's change that to business days instead of working days. That might make it a little more clear. And, yeah.
So I guess, then that's what I was just trying to decide. Is this internal audit we're talking about? It looks to me like it's the complainant, right? Which then, once again, what would that refer to them? So I see what you're saying. Is it?
The burden is not on our agency, it's on the complainant.
Right, and that's, reading the first part, it is our agency, but the second part is the complainant. So, okay.
The language I proposed provides clarity because the burden is on someone else. And we can't subject a complainant to a calendar that they don't engage in on a regular basis. Are we going to send them the calendar? Please respond in 10 business days. Over the next 3 weeks, we're closed these days. That at some point it just becomes ambiguous and crazy, and I just don't think that our internal audit people should be spending their time counting the days that, your response according to our policy is due in 1, 2, 3, 4. I just think it's silly. I just think 14 calendar days is so much better, and that is confusing and cumbersome to our staff.
Okay. All right, well, let's vote on that. So the amendment is to change it from 14 calendar days to 10 business days. So go ahead and vote.
Yes.
Okay, I'm missing 2, but is Board Member Rill here? I'm missing 1. Is everybody double check to see if they voted? I'm still missing 2, so someone double check. Oh, okay, sorry, I didn't notice that. So Board Member Norton's not here, but we have, that motion failed, 10-4. The 4 in favor were, someone, I don't know. There were 4 in favor. It was Klein, Moss, Straight, and Lear. Klein, Moss, Straight, and Lear. Okay. So the motion before the board is that we amend, reinstate lines 118 to 120 and add following IAD within 10 calendar days following complainant, add and notify the complainant of closure. So as soon as this is up, people can vote. Okay, go ahead and vote. Board Member Klein?
Member Klein is a yes.
Every time it does that, I think it's on my hearing aid. Just kidding. Okay. Okay. I'm not, that motion passes unanimously. Do I? Without member there. And it is unanimous. There we go. Board Member Rill is not here. We are going to, okay, so the underlying motion, we're gonna move it. Okay, so the motion is that the board approve R277123, process for members of the public to report violations of statute and board rule, draft 4, as amended on second and final reading. As soon as that's up, you can go ahead and vote. What was your drink? Oh. Okay. Board Member Klein, did you have a vote on this? Is the underlying motion?
Yes.
Okay, board. We're missing 2 votes, so double check. And I'm missing 1 vote. Member Bogus? Okay, that is a unanimous vote. And we are actually going to move on to the MOU. We're going to, who's directing here? Just so we've got people that have been waiting. So we're going to go on to the MOU, and then we'll come back to the item we're skipping. Just so that we can
Do you want me to
be courteous
do
of
you
our
want me to
guests that
set
are
it
here.
up here?
Yeah, will you set it up for us? Set the table.
So this is agenda item 5.4, MOU between USBE and SCSB. Motion for the board is that the committee recommends that the board approve the MOU between USBE and SCSB Draft 3.
Okay, the motion before the board is that the board approve the MOU between USBE and SCSB. Did I say that right? Draft 3. And go ahead and vote on that. I'm not seeing any motions, so. Oh, sorry, what? Hold on one second. Board Member Davis, question?
I just want to just make sure. From what I understood when I was asking about this previously is that everything in the MOU is outlined in code. Is that accurate? So it doesn't, no? Because I was told everything in here was in code.
There are things that are agreed upon it. For example, that they will get their own account with DHRM and that they will have their own records officer, grandma records officer. So there are a couple of things in there that are not statutorily required, that are just things that we've negotiated with them so that they're independent of USBE as far as their expenditures are concerned and their day-to-day operations are concerned, as long as they fit within the budget. So everything is not in
And is the
statute.
independence required in code?
It is. They removed the USBE is over their expenditures any longer. That was taken out of code.
So last quick follow-up. So the extras that were put in were to help what is required in code come to fruition?
Help them be more independent, yes.
Thank you.
Operate more independently.
Okay, we're back to the motion then. And I'll just read the motion again, and people have started voting, but the committee recommends that the board approve, the committee recommends that the board approve the MOU between USBE and SCSB Draft 3. So go ahead and vote. Board Member Klein, do you have a vote?
I will abstain.
Okay. Board Member Klein's abstaining. I need 4 more, 3 more, 2, 1. Oh, that's it. Okay, the motion passes 13 in favor. Wait, we're missing one. Okay, the motion is approved, 14 in favor, 1 abstention. That's Board Member Klein. And we are going to go on to R277, or 5.3. We'll go back up to that one. There you go, all afternoon. Thanks for staying all afternoon. Okay.
Thank you. Going back to agenda item 5.3, R277-113, LEA Fiscal and Auditing Policies. The committee recommends that the board approve R277-113, LEA Fiscal and Auditing Policies, Draft 4 on second and final reading.
Okay, the motion before the board, let me look and see if I have any lights. The motion before the board is that the committee recommends that the board approve R277-113 LEA Fiscal and Auditing Policies, Draft 4 on second and final reading. Okay, go ahead and vote. Board Member Klein, do you have a motion for us?
I will abstain.
Okay, an abstention from that one? Oh, whoops, okay. Hold on just one second. They're getting the right motion up for us. Thank you for checking that. Okay, go ahead and vote. Board Member Klein, you're an abstention, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. 7 more. 2. I'm looking for 2 more votes. I'm looking for 1. Oh, that's it. Okay, 14 in favor and 1 abstention. That motion passes. Go ahead,
Board Member Hymas, Chair Hymas.
Thank you. We are on agenda item 5.5, use of discretionary funds. There are 3 motions here, and I will just read those one at a time to vote if that's okay. The first motion for the board is that the committee recommends that the board commit 1.5 million of federal mineral lease funds for use for compliance with 53G-6-806 parent portal and direct staff to begin using the funds as soon as possible with the intent to comply with the applicable code.
Okay, is there any, yes, go ahead, Board Member Bogus.
So, what do we get for $1.5 million?
I don't know if Scott is around, but we talked about how the Florida contract to get our dashboard going, correct me if I'm wrong here, staff or somebody else, did not get funded, and so we are asking to use this money in order to comply with the code. It looks like we have a staff approaching chair.
Okay.
So, a small follow-up.
Yes.
So, then, this is not the parent portal. This is not the
our
same parent portal.
Parent portal that we have on our website, so no.
Or do you mean the parent portal and the safety?
Well, that's the question.
No, this is the safety bill.
This portal is related to the safety bill, not related to parental access on our website for parent information, for that parent portal.
Okay.
And,
We may have solved it, Scott.
do you need further clarification? Are you good? Okay.
Red Christmas light. Thank you.
Board member,
Oh, sorry.
go ahead. I
Okay.
think we're good. Unless Board Member Davis,
Okay.
Board Member Davis, did you have a question?
I just want to know why there's not a fiscal note with this requirement. That's a lot of money.
Well, I can't answer that, but.
I mean, this is typically money we have at our discretion, and we can't use it for our discretion because there's something that's required in code that should have a fiscal note with it.
Well,
Okay. Now, Deputy Superintendent Scott Jones, do you have some clarification you want to add to this item?
All the answers were given across the table, so no, it's all good. So just background. HB 84, comes out. We do a fiscal note to it. It didn't get funded. So then, through the board, we tried to pursue with the University of Florida, the grant to build the parent portal that is required in HB 84. That process fell through. So now we came to you to ask for, or recommending the 1.5 million of federal mineral release money, which this is an allowable use, research and development, to meet the code, to meet the requirements of the bill, which is, an unfunded mandate. So we have found partial funds. The original estimate, I think, was 3 million, right? So, this will at least get us started on the road to that requirement stemming from HB 84 to build a parent portal for the report, for the dashboard reporting aspects of it. Does that help answer the question, Madam Chair?
I believe it's clear for me, but do we have some other questions out there? Board Member Bogus, do you have a question?
I have an amendment.
You have an amendment. Okay, go ahead. Amendment's appropriate.
So, I would just amend the motion to add the language and direct staff to work with the legislature or a legislator to advise of fiscal needs and possibly secure ongoing funding.
Okay. Is that a second to that motion or amendment? Okay, second to that. Do we need did someone writing that down as we went, or is that something we can?
So that's in addition to, it's not in here, so it's in addition to.
Okay.
You could also just direct staff to.
Yes, go ahead, ask a question.
Direct this question towards Scott. or whoever he directs it to, directed to direct. Scott, does this change anything? I mean, do you need to, is the direction already there? I guess what I'm asking is this necessary, or do you work with legislators on this, or is the law already given and you already know what you need to do? Like, tell me what this does.
Not yet. There you go.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Through Madam Chair, the question is, yes, this helps. I think we'd also be remiss, though, we as staff track your priorities for funding going into the legislative session. You have identified school safety as one of your, requests for funding. Within that, though, is some specific what that money would go for if you were funded. It may also help that, and you don't have to do it this month or something, to also, you as a board, relook at that and add more specificity to it, like for a position that didn't get funded, and maybe for the additional 1.5 million that was on the estimate. We're in a great position there. This adds clarity, gives good direction to staff to work with the legislature, but we can also co-op, if you will, that process of your requests to also see if you as a board want to increase that amount of the request for school safety, given also that the governor's budget has been published and you can see what the parallel processes are for school safety. But short answer is yes, sir. It helps.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Okay.
His light is on, but go to David.
Go ahead, board. Should we go Davis first? While you're looking, go ahead.
Thanks.
Davis.
What is the timeline on implementation, and do we have time to wait until January to ask for the full 3 million in light of the fact that we didn't get this grant to pay for this mandate?
For what I understand, the only date is last July.
Last July for what?
Implementation of the things in HB 84.
We were supposed to have a portal made by last July?
We were supposed to have all of the things done in 84.
Okay. Okay, hold. Okay. Oh.
Add to your answer, Cindy, is from what I understand as well, this, and Scott, please correct me if I'm wrong, this money needs to be used somewhere, and this is a great place to use it.
Madam Chair, the answer to Board Member Hymas's question is yes. Sir.
Okay. Thank you. And then who else did, Board Member Carey?
Hey, Deputy Jones, let's just assume there's a board member who tried to find out how much money the governor had allocated in his budget for school security, and they were unsuccessful. Would you know how much money?
187 million, maybe? I don't think.
Was it?
Right. Yeah,
But does-
Public yesterday.
Do we know?
Madam Chair, I can provide the whole board and the board member that inquired about that money, the amount.
During
that-
finance? Okay.
Yeah, I could do it as part of the monthly
Okay.
budget report. I just don't have it in front of me, so I can do that, though.
Okay. Thank you. We're going to go ahead and move this. So the motion before the board is that the committee recommends that the board commit, and we are doing amendments, sorry. Board Member Bogus. Is there any objection to adding that additional language? Board Member Davis?
I don't have objection to that. Is this is the same bill that's pretty big and onerous that they're going to be revamping for all the LEAs? Are they going to revamp this mandate for us as well? That might be a better question to be answered tomorrow. Well, you think you're going to be addressing some of this tomorrow? Can we postpone this to tomorrow during the study session? This motion?
You are able to make a motion that would say that if you'd like to. So-
I'd like to postpone this motion to tomorrow during the study session on safety so we can wrap our heads around it better. Thank you.
Is there a second? Okay, Board Member Lear, seconded that. The motion before the board is to postpone this item until tomorrow afternoon after the safety, what? Postpone the motion until tomorrow afternoon after the safety item. Does that work? Okay. Any discussion of the motion? Perfect, let's vote. Sorry, I have an orange. Oh, Board Member Carey.
Yeah, and I'm just going to say this because I think I'm reading it off Director Coda's face. I just want to say that we're way overdue with this. I know the School Safety Task Force is concerned. I was talking to Director Coda and Deputy Norman today about the school assessments are due by December 31st, and the numbers I heard earlier today were not encouraging. And I don't blame the LEAs, right? A lot of them are just stuck not knowing what do we do, how do we act. So I'm going to support the motion because I do see the wisdom in having this come after. But I just want to reiterate to the board what it already knows is that there is an urgency from the committee that this stuff happen. But I will support the motion. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so the motion before the board is that the board postpone this motion until the December 6th study session, work session. I think we titled it work session, so it needs to be work session up here because we don't have a study session. Okay, all those in favor, as soon as we have it up there, go ahead and vote. Board Member Klein?
To postpone, yes.
And I need one more. Okay, it's unanimous that we're postponing till tomorrow. And go ahead with the next motion.
The second motion for the board is that the committee recommends that the board return the remaining balance from the impact of Title IX changes on public schools project to the state funds portion of the discretionary funds account and then commit $75,000 of state funds for use by an external firm to advise and assist on the return on investment evaluation process.
Okay. Board Chair Moss?
Slight amendment. I appreciate this one being considered. I had put this in the hopper to assist with the Finance Committee's ROI process. It says external firm. What I had in mind was a research consultant, could be a university. Those that I talked to were districts and a university researcher who looks at educational ROI. So I'd just suggest or propose an amendment to change external firm to research consultant. I guess external, but change firm to research consultant.
Okay. Is there anybody in opposition to that? Okay, so it would be changing, say it one more time.
Objection to changing firm to research consultant because firm suggests commercial and I had universities potentially in mind.
So from a firm to a research consultant. Okay, I don't hear any opposition. We're going to consider that a unanimous change. Sure. Okay, so the motion before the board is that the committee recommends that the board return the remaining balance from the impact of Title IX changes on public schools project to the state funds portion of the discretionary funds account and then commit $75,000 of state funds for use by an external, what was the word again? Research consultant to advise and assist in the return on investment evaluation process. Okay.
Can we get some more explanation?
Sure.
As to
board
what
member
we're talking about, assist on the return on investment evaluation process, what exactly are we talking about?
Yes. Chair Moss, could you articulate a little bit more detail?
Yeah, you bet. With Chair Young's, Chief of Staff Young's assistance and Deputy Jones in Finance, we've been working through the process of evaluating the return on investment, the educational return on investment of the programs that we administer. We've got a nice rubric that's been put together. Our staff have been identifying the inputs that go into each program in terms of staff time and dollars, the outcomes from our performance measures that we would expect to see if they're having an impact. And the difficulty there is just pinning down exactly whether the inputs give you the outcomes. And so there's research teams that specialize this. I've talked to Chief of Staff Young and Director Bruff that this would be a good value in assistance as we work through that process as Finance Committee goes through all these programs. So for about 5 or 10 grand, you can get a deep dive on a particular program that the Finance Committee decides they'd really like to take a deep look at. And that, 75 grand could get you several of those during a year. Other monies could be used for general consulting on how do you pick the best measures to look at whether this program is making a difference. How do you just kind of conduct that process internally? So combination of deep dive and general research for 75 grand would give a year's worth of that kind of outside help.
Okay, follow up.
Yes, go ahead.
Is there a list of programs that have been prioritized for this? To go through this process?
Let me answer.
Yeah.
Yes, the committee has been identifying programs, members of the Finance Committee they'd like staff to tee up in the rubric. They've been doing that. We've probably done 7 or 8 so far. And that remains the judgment of the Finance Committee to select with staff recommendation, and then those are being put through that process as they go through the finance discussion.
What is on the list so far? In order of priority?
We had, they're all in backup. They've been in the Finance Committee each time, so they're available there. I'm having trouble remembering specifics. Let's see, what did we have? We had transportation came up early on. There was some element of literacy. These are tend to be specific programs that have a funding stream, and the question then becomes, what is the ROI from the dollars in? So they're all available on Finance Committee backup, those that have been picked so far.
Okay.
Under what label?
Thank you, Kelsey. Did you hear that? It was measuring the results
No.
of appropriations for specific programs. That's the title you want to look for in the backup.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, go ahead and vote then. This would be using that $75,000 for return on investment. So, Board Member Klein, do you have a vote?
No, I haven't had a chance to look at the list, so that would have been helpful. Yeah.
Okay. I'm missing 3, 2, 1 more. Okay, so that passes with 13 yeses, 2 noes. Those noes would be Board Member Klein and who's the other one? And Board Member Bogus.
Okay, we have one more motion. The committee recommends that the board commit $40,000 of federal mineral lease funds to add a facilitator to support the board in developing its strategic plan beginning January 2025.
I'm not seeing any. Okay, so the motion before the board is that the committee recommends that the board commit $40,000 of federal mineral lease funds to add a facilitator to support the board in developing its strategic plan beginning January 2025. Go ahead and vote. Board Member Klein, did you have a vote on that?
No.
Okay. So the motion passes, 12 yeses, 3 noes. The noes are Board Member Klein, Board Member Green, and Board Member Bogus. So, okay.